tell us a little bit about yourself in short, about your involvement with Indian football. How did things start for you in Indian football? If you could just give us a short brief on that before we kick off.
Right, to start off with, I am born and brought up in Germany. And so being interested in football is nothing special over here. It's very, very normal. It's very, very usual. But I spent 5 years of my schooling in Kolkata between the age of 10 and 15. So went to international school over there where my interest for Indian football comes from because I was living in Kolkata. I got to see a little bit of football here and there, was part of the youth football scene at the time via my school, used to play school tournaments. And then, yeah, 1998, by chance, I was trying to learn HTML. HTML was used at the time for programming websites. Started what was then the unofficial page on Indian football, which then a few months later turned into IndianFootball.com. And that's how I got involved. Then, being based here in Germany, um, at the time, a lot of things were happening. Baichung went to England in 1999, signed for Bury. In 2000, England in India went to travel to England for a historic tour 52 years after the London Olympics. So I helped the organizers with it, did some media work, organization, operational stuff, did the commentary as well for those matches. And yeah, then moved again. IndianFootball.com was there where I and a team of people who were all freelancing, spending free time on it. It was not a commercial venture, trying to keep the world informed on Indian football because it was the first website on Indian football. But through that, I slowly moved into more media work, more management stuff, did stuff for the German Bundesliga, besides doing stuff for the AFF. For example, 2002, we did the first ever camp of an Indian team, of a junior team, of an Indian junior team to Germany. The under 17s at the time, Islam Akhmedov was the coach with players like Shubroto, Mangi and others in that team. 2004, my partner Chris and I, we did some stuff for the Bundesliga. 2005, Bayern traveled with its B team to Kolkata for the IFA Shield. Started doing stuff for Bayern Munich at the time, worked for other entities, other clubs here in Germany on India Matters. Besides that, the media side has always been something what I've been interested on more. Always, I said, writing than anything else. But again, as I've done studied media production as well. So I could do radio, have done television, have done writing. But then it moved slowly into more of a management thing, into regard to governance or internationalizations for um, yeah, for clubs and for leagues or for federations. And then, of course, did some work for FIFA AFC in regard to the roadmap of Indian football at the time. One of the authors of that in the background, and yeah, was involved in setting up of the ISL. Managed Mumbai City at the start. Was involved in setting up the Academy of Roundlas Punjab, and have done work around the world in football. Have done also work in other sports. So that's been my main thing. And in the last 2.5 years, my good friend Akshata Shukla, who was then running Sports Khabri, convinced me to do stuff here on YouTube, and that's how and why I've been doing that since then.
Oh my God. That's massive. That's
And that's not even
massive.
all. So
And
I could tell you, I mean, I always say I could go on and on and on for hours, but again, I think that's a short summary of what I've done
but,
in,
but,
in the
but I
world
think
of
yeah, I
football.
think I think that gives the people a good clarity about your involvement, first-hand involvement around Indian football and how things have been. So, sir, today we're going to deep dive into the things that we just talked about. We'll start with, you said that you were the part of Indian Super League. Okay, we'll start with a simple question. Give me three main reasons why India is a 141 ranked nation in football today.
The first thing I think is grassroots. I think our biggest problem is grassroots and youth. I think we lack in the quality that we need to produce. Um, I say that if a lot of friends don't want to agree to that, who themselves are coaches, I think our coaching, our quality of coaching is a problem. And I think competitions. I always say that five things need to be interlinked for us to be successful in the long run. It is grassroots, it is youth, it is coaching, it is competitions, and it is scouting. If you can take care of those five things, then only it can be successful. And always to put the blame on the AFF or to put it on the state associations, I feel is very, very simple because the work around the world in regard to youth and grassroots development is done by academies and clubs. So if you take care of those points, it will take time. It will not happen tomorrow. It is not somewhere where you can jugaad and say, okay, in 2 years we are sorted. This will take 15, 20 years most probably to settle, but you need to start the work at some stage.
Interesting. I think that's like a basic perspective to where we stand today. Okay, so let's start with the mess of Indian Super League. 2014 was the time when this started in partnership with FSTL Reliance. I would like to take a moment and reflect at the promises that were made in the favor of development of Indian football, right? So I have a list of quotation double quotes that were mentioned by the stakeholders and individuals who got started with it. There were a lot of promises made with revolutionizing sports from grassroots level, bringing in good foreign quality players and developing Indian footballers. Mrs. Nita Ambani emphasized on a bottom-up approach to starts from grassroots itself. We were aiming for 2026 FIFA World Cup qualification. All right, and I can just go on and on with it. The another one, the Indian Super League, the first of its kind glamorous football league in India, was launched here Thursday by star team owners Sachin Tendulkar, John Abraham, Abhishek Bachchan, Ranbir Kapoor, and brand ambassador Varun Dhawan, who promised to popularize the game and invest in grassroots development of the sport in the country. There is so much I can just go on and on about it. What happened during the era of ISL, and how do you look at it from the starting till the time with the partnership between FSTL?
See, first of all, there has to be one correction. In 2014, FSDL did not exist. It was still a partnership of IMG and Reliance. IMG Reliance started off the league. So
Yeah,
there was a
sorry.
lot of inputs from IMG. IMG, of course, also was behind setting up of the Indian Premier League in cricket. IMG is the oldest sports management company in the world. So that was the partnership where the technical inputs were coming from. So the European side of IMG, the London office or the Paris office, those were giving the inputs in regard to what needs to be done. Now, when the ISL was set up, I did some work for them in 2013, 2012, 2013. The point was very, very clear that one was looking at the IPL, the success of the IPL. One was looking at the Premier League, but was also looking at the American sports model, which was also a role model for the IPL. So it's a franchise system as per an American thought process. And the focus, despite being the words used, bottom up approach and other things, it was a top down approach. Very, very clearly, you wanted to be successful with the league at the top, create something successful, generate money so that could be invested into the system and then build the system at all levels. What and I go back to something I said in August 2014 in front of Ms. Zambani. I said, we can spend as much marketing money as we want, but if you don't take care of the bottom half of the pyramid, it needs to meet somewhere in the middle, right? You cannot go
But
from the bottom down.
that's where she said about a bottom up approach. It's there in the articles as well.
Again, I have not heard this. Again, I was there, so I don't recall her saying that. That's why I am sometimes very
It's on
skeptical.
ISL official website. ISL's
Okay,
official website.
but again, I have not heard it personally from her, so I don't know. Because I am one of the persons who said it, and I know that we at Mumbai City did that, right? The same people are still there 11 years later trying to build the grassroots at Mumbai City. So Mumbai City did certain things. Did they do everything right? No. The point was that knowing how India runs and operates, and I think if you remember what we saw around the whole Messi tour as well a few weeks ago, is that India loves its superstars. And that is something of a culture, be it cricket, be it Bollywood, be it even football, that is what works. The first 2, 3 years, you had international top stars, even aging top stars, but you had top stars coming into the system. It gave a certain level of visibility. But the problem of, forget ISL, but the problem of Indian professional leagues outside of cricket, where you can recoup the money, all of them are actually factually overspending for trying to be sustainable in the long run. And if you're not sustainable in the long run at the top, you will not invest money at the bottom. You will not invest money into infrastructure. A lot of owners have said publicly, let me focus on the first team. I will spend on the first team. I will not spend on the rest. Might be the wrong approach. But for someone to think, I want to be champions next summer, or do I invest in something which will take 15 to 20 years to give me actually results? I'd rather go the short way and the easy way and spend money in the summer to get my success in the next season.
But when ISL came into picture, it was things that were the promises that were made in the favor of developing Indian football. Do you think those were unrealistic?
Yes. If you want to say it's unrealistic, yes, because again, it one thought that you could revolutionize football in India in the short term. You can do things in 5 to 10 years, change the whole ecosystem, change the whole scenario. And because you were changing things at the top, you can change the whole pyramid. And that was
And
unrealistic.
do Yeah. So, see, because, as a football fan, most of the football fans in India, for us, it's more development. Entertainment के लिए तो मैं कुछ और भी देख लूंगा, right? It's for me, Indian football is not about entertainment. Rather, I would want to see Indian football develop. That's where I want to go
Sagil,
about
I
it.
don't know.
That
I don't know if that is the case with most Indian football fans. If you think about Indian football and the success of national team, this and their clubs and everything, I don't think that most Indian football fans care about where does the talent come from. Now we're talking about it. We're talking about it now. The problems persisted also in 2023 when we were all saying, "Oh, you know what? We've won 3 tournaments. We have arrived. We're going to the Asian Cup next year. Asia, we will show Asia where we stand." So my own
that
experience
was
has
a
been
marketing gimmick.
yes, 100%. And the
Yeah.
problem is that people talk about grassroots youth football, this and that and everything. My simple question to everyone who's doing grassroots and youth football: have you ever produced even one Asian level Indian footballer? Let's not go into the 50s and 60s. The other countries didn't used to play, so therefore it doesn't make sense to compare it. But if we talk about the last 25, 30 years that I have been watching Indian football from close quarters, have we been able to create Asian level talent? And the simple answer, as good as a Sunil is, as good as a Baichung is, but again, you're not Asian level talent to take us to a World Cup. So therefore, the
Let
simple answer is a no.
But what if the individuals who are running grassroots, who are running academies, counter you with the fact that in the Indian football environment is not sustainable for us to produce Asian level talents? What would you suggest him?
You have to develop it in the Indian football ecosystem. The question is, look at other parts of the world there where people even have less money to develop players. Do you think in a Senegal, in a Mali, in an Equatorial Guinea, or in a Ghana or a Nigeria, they spend as much money as being spent in grassroots and youth football in India? No, they don't. Do they have the infrastructure that we have in India? No, they don't. Right. So we are cribbing at a high level. Again, that the money is not properly utilized in football is another problem. But you have to do with whatever resources you have at hand. And then you have to try to produce the best kind of talent possible to be able to create a mark. If again, and that is, I think, the biggest problem is that in India, I always like to deflect it. Oh, it's his blame, it's his blame, it's his blame. But it's not my mistake. As long as I don't introspect, I am not myself accountable for my own mistakes, we are not going to go anywhere, right? Everywhere there are problems in the system. If I want to talk to people, even here in Germany, people will tell me, I've got a problem here, I've got a problem there. So it's not, again, people tell me it's a question of money, it's a question of infrastructure. No, look at how much Qatar has spent, look at how much the Chinese will spend. Are they really successful? Right? So, Senegal won the African Cup of Nations a few days ago. Look at the story of a Sadio Mane. Sadio Mane comes from a poor village from the middle of nowhere in Africa. And he's played for clubs like Liverpool Football Club, Bayern Munich, or is now playing at Al Nassr. So these are the realities. So everyone in Indian football, including you and me, we all need to question ourselves. Are we doing enough? Are we doing the right things to take Indian football to where it could, should, and needs to be, or where we would like to see it? We all talk about, we dream about Indian football going to the World Cup. That's an easy dream. And that is going to be asked in the summer again. Every 4 years, the question comes up, "Arey, why is India not in the World Cup?" And that becomes even headline news in the mainstream media. But the work that needs to be put in, that is not being done. And people try to use shortcuts and do this and that and everything. That's why we're not achieving success.
One of the other promises that also came into the picture was the Ambani families. They said that Indian football clubs will be sustainable in 5 years, right? And along with this, the promises were of 2026 World Cup qualification. There were promises of developing grassroots. All of those things failed. Now, as a responsible stakeholder who failed with her statements, with who failed with her promises, Mrs. Nita Ambani, keeping aside where she stands, her profile and everything, as a responsible stakeholder, do you think her presence was required in the mess that Indian football was in?
See, the reality is, if I look at Indian club football in the last 3 decades, I go back to 1995. A certain Zeb Blatter, as the secretary of FIFA, came to India, looked at Indian football. Everybody proudly says, "Oh, you know what? We're playing Kolkata League, we're playing Duran Cup, we're playing Rovers Cup, we're playing IFA Shield." Mr. Blatter asked the simple question is, why don't you have a national league? He asked the simple question. The National League was started in 1996 according to his recommendations. In 2007, he came to Kolkata. He watched a Kolkata derby in the NFL. He went to the Kolkata clubs and he made a statement in German saying, "Oh, now I know why these clubs are so old." The Kolkata clubs took it as a compliment, is actually a sarcastic comment, right? The problem of 2007 still exists in 2026. What happened? The AFF then said, "Okay, you know what? The semi-professional NFL turns into the I League." We suddenly had on paper a professional league. Reliance came in 2010. Mr. Ambani bailed out Praful Patel because Z was not paying the money. Your commercial partner, Z Group, who came in 2005, they did a lot of things, pushed the promotion of football to a different level. I did myself a few expert or commentary gigs for them, so it was good. But then they were organizing the ICL, the Indian Cricket League. The IPL came in, and Z was in trouble. So then the bailout happened for the AFF because Mr. Prabhu Patel approached Mr. Ambani. Mr. Ambani said, "Hey, listen, you know what? We've got IMG Reliance. Yeah, would we be able to?" He spoke to IMG. IMG said, "Yeah, we can try and professionalize." 2011, 2012, IMG Reliance looked at the I League structure and said, if we want to be successful, the I League clubs need to be made better, stronger, right? To be able to sustain. The clubs didn't accept it. The Kolkata clubs, the Goan clubs did not want to be indirectly taken over or involved with corporates. Amongst others, Godrej was supposed to be one of the corporates coming into the system at the time. Only thereafter, in 2012, the idea of the ISL started to actually take hold because it was part of the original contract signed, the 15-year contract. If we cannot recreate a professional league, we will have to create a new one. That is where then IMG spent its head on it and said, you know what? We've created the IPL. The IPL is an American professional league plus Premier League model. We can copy it in football. And then the 8-team professional league came about. And a lot of statements were made. Praful Patel also said, "Oh, you know what? The I League will stay the top league," and all that kind of stuff at the time. A lot of statements were made in 2014, which, again, at the time, difficult because if you saw the hype around the ISL in 2014, if you see what happened around the opening match in Kolkata between Atletico de Kolkata and Mumbai City, if you see what we ourselves at Mumbai City experienced, we were flying at the start, nobody bothered about us. After the second, third match day, whenever we were moving around in Mumbai, we were going to the airport, they not only knew a Freddie Ljungberg or a Nicholas Anelka, they knew a Shubro Topal, they knew a Nodong Bhutia, they knew a Subhash Singh. They suddenly, Lalindika Ralte, our Indian players suddenly became stars. So the potential was there. But I warned about one thing. We
But
were spending a lot on marketing in the first year. The first
yes,
year was marketing. and the marketing was brilliant. Diwali in Mumbai, ye Diwali football volley, it was plastered across the city. You would have thought you could have been anywhere in the world which was a football city. Mumbai looked like a football city. But the problem was that the issues which we had, again, the clubs in the first season of the ISL had weeks to prepare, to put together a squad, a team, a management to run the season. There was no time, right? It was also not clear how an integration between ISL and I League could work out down the road. And the mistake, again, which afterwards is easy to say, in 2013, Star Sports not only became a broadcaster, but became a stakeholder in the Indian Super League, which at the time in 2013 made a lot of sense because the biggest fear that Reliance had, can we get a broadcaster to show the Indian Super League? Because we're talking 2013, only the IPL existed. None of the professional leagues had started at the time. There was no kabaddi, there was no volleyball, whatever else you want to talk about. Everything came, kabaddi came a few weeks before the ISL. The PKL came in July, sorry, in August, if I remember right, 2014. We came in October. So therefore, there were certain realities in 2013 and certain assumptions made, which, according to me, were wrong. But again, they were made with the best intentions. But
Right.
it was clear to me that in 5 or in 10 years, you will not be able to change the system around if your broadcaster is not going to give you money. Because for 10 years, Star Sports was actually embedded in the system and they were not going to give you even 1 rupee for the rights because they had paid 200 crores to be a stakeholder in the league. Why would they pay money for it? If I own the league, why will I, I own the broadcast. So there were some strategic mistakes which afterwards make sense, which, but at the time, it otherwise sense to actually do. Otherwise, you would have not been able to start the product. And the problem started from year 2, year 3, where you started to realize we are spending too much. We need to reduce the spending because forget the overspending on the foreigners, even on the Indians, they were overspending. I've said this since the mid 90s. We have been overpaying our Indian players. It is not a new phenomenon. For the standard of football that the Indian players were playing, they have been overpaid for the last 3 decades. I always say I'm happy for the players because there is a demand in the market. So I'm happy for them on one side. But for the quality and for the value that there is, they do not deserve the money that they get. But again, I'm happy for the players.
We have, but we'll deep. I have a question and a set of arguments around that also. You know what leads to players being demotivated to play for the national team. Everything, we'll get into it. So we just talked about the unrealistic promises made in the favor of Indian football and 2024 last season of ISL, and then when the partnership was set to renew, uh, FSDL came up with new terms because what they were doing previously, giving that 50 crore amounts, I think you have to consider that the most positive thing that they were doing in the favor of Indian football was giving that 50 crores amount to AIFF. Do you agree with that?
No,
Okay.
because the 50 crores made the AFF complacent. I was getting 50 crores without having to do anything. Right? So your problem with the AFF was that I am getting money. I am not organizing the top tier of the country, which is actually my best product of club football in India, where FSDL was also spending its own money. And I'm getting 50 crores to do all my other things. Plus, I had other money sources. So it make the AFF complacent and the AFF think that, listen, yeah, I'm getting the money. And if they want to extend, they will give me at least that or even more. Not realizing that for Reliance to organize the league, they were spending in the end about 100 crores or 100 more than 100 crores a year on organizing the Indian Super League. Right? So it's not just the 50 crores in cash that the AFF was getting. You have to add on top of it about 100 crores in organizing the ISL. If you want to include Reliance Foundation about what they are spending or have been spending on youth grassroots football as well.
Yeah,
So the figure of 50 crores becomes,
very
yeah,
very
much, much
small.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, but now that ended, are you uh, do you think that this mess was needed for the reality of Indian football to be exposed, which was being like overshadowed by what was happening over the last 10 years with ISL running as it was running? Do you think this mess was required?
No, if the AFF had done its homework, and I go back, I said around the final of the SAF
What's
championship,
the homework? What's the homework?
either extend the contract with Reliance at favorable terms to both sides, or find an alternative commercial partner to run the league.
But if you had extended the contract and things would have continued in the same way, अगर आज ISL के साथ मतलब FSDL और ISL का पार्टनरशिप होता और ISL 10 साल और चलता, do you think Indian football would have reached to some standards, some good standards on a upward graph?
Difficult to say, because again, to say is always, I always say it's very difficult to look in the future, especially in Indian football, what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, because you don't even know what's happening next week. But the point was with the ISL, that we had a functional league, that we had a system which was running. The quality of foreigners coming to India, despite not being of the level that we had in the first 3 years, but it was still much better than what we had in the past. And
But
it
the ranking does not speak that. But the ranking
the
and where we
the,
stand
the rank,
internationally today.
listen, we were not at the time where, so if you could look at it the different ways, that in the time of the ISL, we reached the 90s in the ranking, right, in the early
But
years of the
but
ISL.
but
So
but
so so
we have
so
to. But if we can
so the
deep dive
rankings
into
to
that.
me, no, but my question is, were we actually in the 90s in the rankings at the time?
But the players and the team that we had when we were a 96th when we were 96th on the FIFA ranking in 2017, wait, I'll just have the list of the players as well. Like for example, we had Robin Singh, we had JJ, we had Sunil, we had Balwant Singh. We had all these players. A environment like ISL did not play a role in their development. They all came from the era of I League and whatever was happening prior to 2014. The generation
So
that.
there is there, in my opinion, is your wrong assumption if you're going to say that the I League created those players. Robin Singh was not created by the I League. Robin Singh was created by the Tata Football Academy. A JJ, a Gurpreet, a Pritam Kotal, a Lalindika Ralte, all these players, Pranay Halda belongs to our generation, were created by the AFF's Indian Arrows program. Right? If
Yeah.
you're going to give credit to the I League, you have to then question the clubs also how much of their contribution is.
No, I am not
But the
giving credit to
performance,
the I League.
no, no,
I
no,
am
no.
giving
But I
credit
am,
to the
if you're
20
talking
prior
about
to 2014
2017,
era.
if you're talking about 2017, these players have been playing then for 3 years, 4 years in the ISL to reach to that level. So
Okay.
if you want to get into the nitty gritty of these things, then you have to question our league system even in the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s. If you're questioning the ISL, you as well have to question the I League, and you have to question the NFL as well, because we were living in the 90s and the 2000s of those 25 players who were coming out of the Tata Football Academy. That was the backbone of Indian youth football and of the senior national team. Ranjan Chaudhary himself has produced more national team players than anybody else can ever do. He's produced more than 200 players, right? So that is the reality. The point was, at the starting of the ISL, our Indian players were actually not only competing, they were key players in their respective teams. JJ was a key player when
Yeah.
Chennai FC won the title. He was not a sub player. He was playing. Robin Singh was playing at the clubs that he was playing. So the question is, what kind of talent came? If you're saying that these players have come through, then you have to question also the second line and the third line, meaning I League 2, and then the lower leagues. What kind of talent are you producing to get into the ISL level?
But
Because the
do you
number of
think there is a
spots,
huge gap? There is a huge
the,
gap between
because
quality
the
of
number
the
of
I
spots
League
has
and.
actually gone up. Think about it, that now you have 7 Indians starting. We are talking in those days of five or six, five, four Indians starting at the start even. So to
Yeah.
get into the squad was actually tougher in those years where
So
these guys were
that's
successful.
what I That's why I questioned you in the starting for the top three reasons why we are a 141 ranked nation, and you gave a basic overview. But if we can again deep dive through these league systems and everything that we are talking about, the players that are coming up today, what are the other reasons that we are a 141 ranked nations? Are do these things also play a role in that?
As I say, all all clubs, ISL and down, all academies, the the training centers that the state or even the AFF is running are part of that problem, right? I mean, if I look at the under 17 World Cup, where I was able via the German FA provides a certain level of help, Nikolai Adam and other things. They spend most of their time here in Germany preparing for that World Cup. But if I look at the World Cup squad then, and if I look at what these boys have achieved, then those most of the boys have actually not made the cut, right? If we're very, very honest. So the question is, I am questioning the clubs. I have to question the coaches, but I actually also have to question the players, right? Is my will, desire to push myself to be a professional, to take away the sport? Why are our players maturing at an older age? My favorite example is Rahul Beke. Rahul Beke, a few years ago, people used to call him Lord. गाली देते थे उसको, right? He can't do this and that and everything. He's become our most dependable centre back as a as an example, right? Who's not even a
But
centre back. He's
Khalid play him in the right back.
what Khalid plays is a different question. Again, that's a whole new conversation of should Khalid Jamil be a national team coach? But the point
We'll
is
get
at the
into
end
it.
of the day the point is at the end of the day is a young player challenging him? Is a young player challenging Sandesh Jingan to push him out at club level, take his spot, and then take his spot in the national team? Is that happening? I have to be better. We had a situation last year where people were talking about the under 23s, this, that, and everything. How much of time did the under 23 players get in the Super Cup? As an example, right? If I'm good enough, if I'm better than someone else, my club coach will always play who is better. A foreigner doesn't care XYZ's name. He will play who is best
I
in the
think
position.
this is the same thing which Bibiano told me last time when I had a conversation with him. Same thing he told me. You have to
And
prove yourself.
Bibiano could be a good marker and say, Bibiano, talk about now you qualified for the Asian Cup, but let's talk about your 2018 squad of your under 16s, which I would rate higher than the current squad, right? But now the pathway, the road to a FIFA under 17 World Cup is much easier, 48 nations. That has to be kept in mind. We qualified in 2008 for the 2011 AFC Asian Cup, which was much harder than it's qualifying for the Asian Cup today, and we're not qualifying for the Asian Cup. So the question is, if I'm banking on the older players, and after that, the next generation is not taking the spots and actually pushing them out and taking their spots and making us better, then the question falls on the whole system.
Do you also think that there is a uh, lack of source of inspiration? Taking inspiration from a senior player to push yourself at higher levels. Do you think there is a lack in it?
See, if I have a lack of inspiration of not wanting to be a top level professional player, then you're wrong. You should leave the job immediately. And forget football, any job, right? It is on you, right? It is, and if I again, I once in a while when I'm in India, I visit academies and I ask kids, who are your heroes and whatever and all, and until 2 3 years ago, it was always Ronaldo, Messi, there's that everything. Those were the names were being thrown around. Nobody rarely mentions Sunil Chhetri or Baichung Bhutia. Where I say, who of the current lot can get to the level of a Sunil or a Baichung? Who at the moment would try to achieve what a Gurpreet has done abroad, right? Or like a Chante, we organized him the trial at Viking Stavang in 2019. It is our standards are lower, but the ISL clearly has not done everything right. But the rest of the system cannot say, we've been doing things right. That is our biggest problem. And every stakeholder in Indian football has to look at himself or herself and say, you know what? I need to do better. I need to introspect. Nobody questions him or herself. They question everybody else, but they don't question themselves. If you don't question yourself, that is, in my opinion, the biggest problem, because then you cannot get better tomorrow.
Right. What was your first thought when you saw the videos of Chetri, Gurpreet, Sandesh, Chante, all of them requesting FIFA, please help us play football. We want to play football. What thought came into your mind? Because yeah, I'll not add anything to it. Just tell me, what did you feel about it emotionally and logically?
I thought to myself, it's coming very late. I would have expected it earlier. To be very, if the professional me looks at it, this is a situation which was clear to me, and I told certain players in the summer that this situation would arise. It looks very likely that we would be heading this way. Forget players, club officials, people within the AFF. I told them, right, that this. I said in April, the day the Supreme Court said you have to do a tender and we will overview it. That was where we were heading into this chaos. Very, very clearly.
Can you elaborate more on that?
The All India Football Federation should have gone to the Supreme Court and said, we are renegotiating a contract with Reliance, FSDL, in regard to the future of the top tier league of Indian football and territory commercial rights of Indian football. And the Supreme Court, as it did with everything else, got involved in a matter where the Supreme Court has no, in my opinion, no jurisdiction. The top tier league in the country does not have to be run by the national federation. The Premier League, the Bundesliga, La Liga, all of these leagues, forget, you can name XYZ league, is not run by the national federation. It is run by a private entity or private body. Now,
And
also what has
also
been proven,
government has been encouraging more of private investments into the sport ecosystem.
yeah, but again, here we are talking about governance. This is a simple governance. This is not a legal matter. This is a sports governance matter. And sports governance is the weakest point in Indian sports at the end of the day. The biggest problem. As someone who's worked around the world on sports governance, it is our weakest point. The simple question was, if you want the ISL to succeed and run, you need a commercial partner. Because the AFF, even in its best of times, will not be able to raise the money to run this league. Forget getting 50 crores. AFF would have to generate 100 crores to run the league. We are now running a 3-month competition at a cost where you will recognize and realize the difference that a top class ISL is and what an ISL this season will be. Because now it is about survival. And looking forward at the 20-year plan of the AFF, let's see how many clubs actually sign up for it. Because it does not make sense. Because if you are unable to bring in the control of the league, either in the name of the clubs or in the name of a commercial partner, the AFF will not be able to raise the money because the AFF keeps sort of control of the league.
So
Because that has
after
been said by the Supreme Court.
this short period of league that you are having of for the last season, do you think there will be much more problems coming in after
Yes.
this?
Yes.
Similar situation will be coming in.
Worse. Because the risk is, if we look at what is happening at the moment, or what has happened over the last 6, 7, 8 months, where a lot of people did not, again, I know a lot of people who said Reliance will never walk away. And I said in April, the second Reliance said, you know what, we're giving all the rights back to the AFF. Reliance were out of this. Reliance have lost 3,500 crores. Again, they have done their own set of mistakes, but they have set a certain standard in regard to organizing the league, quality of the league, quality of stadium, of grounds, infrastructure for fans, broadcast, social media. They set a benchmark, right? And all of that is gone because we, in the worst case, in the summer, we're in a situation like in 1995, where we'll say, okay, listen, we have to start from scratch. Because teams are losing
So
money in these 3 months, like as if they're losing money like
one
anything.
quick question, one quick question. Since Reliance is no more in partnership with AIFF at the moment, what is something I can thank Reliance for? Let's keep aside the benchmark and everything because again we'll go back to the how it was. What is something that I can thank Reliance for at an Indian football level that thank you so much for giving us back this, giving this back to us. Thank you so much. When we are waving at them, what is something we can thank them for? Thank you so much for giving this to Indian football.
The financial investment that they made, all the things that I just mentioned in regard to the quality of the league, because we've never had that quality of a league, of a broadcast, of the quality of grounds,
Right.
transport, travel, accommodation,
But
all those things,
it's all
which are
over, right? It's all
at
over
the
now.
moment it's over. And it depends on what
Yeah.
happens in the coming weeks and months. And you will recognize the drop in standard once this new ISL starts. You saw the standard of the Super Cup. You saw
Oh
the
my God,
broadcast on
grounds.
Star Sports, right? At least there was certain standard of quality. And then you saw the AFF live stream, which was there for the sake of doing it. That is it. But the ground, again, the grounds, why are the grounds in such a state? Because Reliance and the clubs used to ensure I have a block booking from September to end of April. I maintained the ground. Listen, if you're football, and this is another thing, there is no respect in India of sporting grounds. A football pitch can be used for anything and everything. There is no respect
Except football. Except football.
except football. It's good for concerts. It is good for political rallies. It's good for 10,000 people to dance on it. You can use it as a parking lot. You can use it for everything. So that is your key problem because
But it's
that
the problem of Indians. It's the problem of Indians.
yeah, it's a problem of India. So that's a sad part because we do not respect the the venue, the sporting venue as such. Be it a football stadium, be it an indoor arena, be it whatever, we do not understand the value of a good quality venue because our venues are mainly multi-purpose. Our venues are owned by the government. So that's why, for example, the JRD Tata Sports Complex in Jamshedpur, because it's under Tata hands, it is better managed and better controlled because they own it, but they're the only one.
So you are in Germany right now. You are in Germany right now, and I think I should ask you the question: how do German? I think in terms of sports and the governance, how do German administrators focus on sports or emphasize or govern sports in comparison to Indian sports governance?
See, not everything in Germany is perfect, right? Let's be clear. Be it Germany, be it other parts of the world, not everything is perfect. But again, it is mainly in the first instance about the sport, be it football, be it other sport. I always love to take the example of hockey. Field hockey in Germany is an amateur sport. And in the last Olympics, Germany beat India to reach the Olympic final and then lose to the Dutch. But again, and the Indians are actually professionals. So the question to you is the guys running the Hockey Federation are actually not full time staff, right? There are people who are running that sport, who are, honorary people who are running it in their free time. But they try to do the best in the interest of the sport. And what I always say is India is a very good example at the moment. I don't have to be an ex-athlete to know what is good for a sport. You'd rather need to be good in sports governance and sports management and marketing to understand what a sports needs. If I'm an ex-athlete, that's a bonus. And football at the moment is showing you a very good example of an ex-athlete being the president or even in other positions does not guarantee you that you understand the sport or the management of the sport. Having played it, having coached it doesn't mean that you can manage the sport.
Management is a completely different skill. 100%, 100%. Undoubtedly, right? Yep. So I think the situation that is going to come up, how do we prepare ourselves for that? What's your message to the? Okay, yeah, I just got
Mm.
reminded of this. Uh, Gurpreet said it on Rev Sports, I guess, that when this demand was being created, that foreigners are going to other countries. League is not there; they are going to other countries. They are playing in other countries. But Gurpreet said that it's not as easy as them going out. Okay, and for Indians to go outside and play, it's really difficult. How much do you agree to that? Because see, we can create that social media communication, अरे वो कर रहा है तो तू भी कर ले, वो कर रहा है तो तू भी कर ले, but realistically, do you think Gurpreet is right or wrong, or what's your point of view on that?
Gurpreet is 100% right because Gurpreet has gone out the hard way. I mean, if you look at when Gurpreet left Indian shores, he in 2 seasons, most probably on both occasions, lost the I-League title for East Bengal and then went to Norway, worked his way up the hard way over there, and again came back, and the rest, as they say, is history. As having enabled Indian players trials abroad, I always had to beg people to give the trials. It was not a matter of quality. So if an Indian footballer wants to go abroad, let's say the Indonesian league, right? It seems like half of the ISL foreigners have gone to the Indonesian league. None of the Indonesian clubs will take an Indian footballer. So there is no market for an Indian player to go to somewhere and say, listen, I want to play here, I want to play there. Nobody will take them. So if anyone wants to go there abroad, either someone like myself or other people who are based abroad have to beg people to put them in. That happened in Sunil's case, right?
who
A
who
good
is at
friend
fault
Nuno,
for this situation? Who is at fault for such situations?
the whole Indian football ecosystem, because the players are not good enough. Our players are not good enough, right? Gurpreet didn't say that because he didn't want to, say something about his fellow footballers. But he also implied with that we are not good enough to go abroad and play abroad. And also, I say, if I'm looking at, let's say, Southeast Asia, which is the closest, if I have the option to sign an Indian player, a Japanese or an Australian player, a player from Africa, a player from Brazil or Argentina, or a player from Europe, who would I sign? If you were managing a club in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, doesn't matter. As even as an
I would
Indian,
have I would have rather looked at a fourth or third division Spanish or German player rather than an Indian player.
yeah, that's the reality. So therefore, that market that certain fans perceive to be there is not there. I know of players who've tried their luck and spoke to, and agents have spoken to. Again, not happening.
How
As
do
sad
we
as it might
how do we
sound,
make a breakthrough? How do we create a breakthrough in this?
they need to be better. The quality needs to be better, no?
Yeah.
Right? And when opportunities come, you have to take them. We've had players who've had opportunities. I've created opportunities, but the players, again, my friend Ashish Negi has spoken about it as well. We've created opportunities. Players didn't go at the time,
For
right? So
example,
I'm not going to take names, but the players
but
didn't
I think
want to go, and
already
then
there in the it's already there in the public, so I think it's not something confidential for you to.
no, I've got certain players who have tried, but where nothing ever
Okay,
happened, and I'm
no
not going
problem.
to name them. Again, whenever we tried something, who is my examples? My examples is, again, Changte, as I said, Viking Star, Viking Day. 2013, I was able to do something, when the Reliance League didn't happen, we spoke to a lot of players, and then Nimel Chetri and Godwin Franco went to Fortuna Düsseldorf. I remember Renedy telling me, I would love to have a trial abroad, even though I'm old, this and that, everything. We got him in 2015 to CSK Sofia. Yeah, Nuno and myself were able to do that. So therefore, if you want to, you can. Today, it is close to impossible. If I even would beg people and say, listen, would you have a look at an Indian player? They said, Arunava, we can talk about a lot of things. Please don't send me an Indian footballer. Right? That's the reality. Sorry. And
And
that's, yeah,
as
it
an
sounds hard,
ecosystem,
but that's harsh.
hard, harsh. I think as an ecosystem, we have to follow a bottom-up approach to improve this. You agree with that?
No, no. I need to do my development at both ends. I need to develop the
Yeah.
top, but I need
No,
to bottom.
I, I
And I need to
I'll
meet
just
in the middle.
go. Yeah, but the basics that we talked about grassroots, it has to start from bottom. But at the same time, I think the national team also represents the face, the country's football, and the conversations about overseas players that we have regularly been talking about now with Bangladesh, not just Hamza Chaudhary, but they're looking at other overseas players also who are now going to be joining the national team. So they are going to be a much more stronger nation than us in football. And then when we lose against them in the upcoming years, we'll look at it and say, oh, we just lost to Bangladesh, man. What quality of Indian footballers are there in the national team? But then that's the reality as well, that their experience, their quality of footballers are, our footballers are nowhere close to that. So perfectly agree with you, we have to look at the both ends, and that's where the conversation of overseas players start.
See, I go back to 2001 where I first raised the topic of players of Indian origin. The OCI's topic didn't exist because it was PIO, the PIO card. I had a PIO card at the time, because I'd seen something on Vikas de Rosso playing for AC Milan, and he was playing for France already. Come through the system at Le Havre and all, and then later on played for Paris Saint Germain. So I said, and I'd seen in England a few players of origin. Harpal Singh was playing at the time with Baichung at Bury as well. And a little later, I remember I saw pro debut of Michael Chopra for Newcastle here in Leverkusen in the Champions League. So there were players coming through the system. And Mr. Dasmunshi looked at it, tried it, didn't happen. Stephen pushed it. Stephen Constantine in his first stint. I was involved in getting Stephen to India in 2001, 2002. So Stephen tried as well, didn't happen. And then Bob Houghton tried it in 2006 when he came and said, listen, we played with India tournament in Canada, in Vancouver. We played Cardiff City. Michael Chopra was playing for them. And then, we had a conversation after that around the Asian Cup qualifiers. My PIO card went to FIFA. FIFA said, okay, listen, for at the time they said, yeah, it's enough for us. If you amend your legislation, you could get PIOs to play for India. Ideally would like either dual citizenship or an Indian passport, but if it needs to be, we would be willing. The government didn't clear those things, right? And the conversations went on and on. Michael Chopra did try around the Asian Cup to come into the Indian team. It didn't happen at the time. We did have then Arata. It took him 5 years to get a passport. I've spoken to multiple sports ministers and governments and AFFs over the last 25 years. It hasn't happened, right? And we could have been at the front of the pack. We did not need to be. We would have pushed our Indian national team. I think we would have pushed also the Indian players to be better than what they are and what they could be. And to me, that was, we didn't do what we needed to do. And yeah, we're losing out. Look at Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. I mean, Sri Lanka has some real interesting talent coming in. They'll take some time. Pakistan needs to sort out their own football, but they will. Even Nepal will now soon look at players. Their top player plays in England in the fifth year in the National League. They will all try and get their players in. We are turning it down. Ryan Williams has happened by chance because JSW, of course, has on one side done it for India, but JSW has also done it for himself because they get an additional foreign-born player to play for them in their team. So these are all the realities. And again,
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's where we stand.
Yep, but to some extent, I think we have to be thanking someone like Ryan Williams to take up the citizenship. As an Indian, looking at the quality of life also in Australia and in India,
But
and
he's
then
playing in
giving up.
India, right? He's here. He's good friends with the Sunil. Randy has been assistant coach. So these guys will, Gurpreet, all these guys will have had an influence. Hey, Ryan, why don't you take up Indian citizenship? Why don't you play for us?
Yeah,
Right. So these guys
I
will
think
have
he
had
got
a
the
positive effect. Park
confidence.
Jindal got involved, and that's why he did it. Because Ryan Williams at this age will not be playing for Australia anyway. And I remember his brother Arian used to play in the I League at Neroka. He had said, and I don't remember if it was 2018 or 19, if there's an opportunity, I would love to play for India. His brother had said that before that. So there was this conversation which has been there in their own family. If there is an opportunity, you know, they would play for us. So therefore, yeah, we should be happy. And I find it bizarre that people are questioning why someone like a Ryan Williams would want to play for India. He's making that decision. That's his decision. I welcome it. I find it great that he's taken that decision, and we should welcome him with open arms that he wants to play for us. I
Confident.
did an interview with Shan about 2 years ago, where he mentioned he would be interested and open to playing for India. He was playing in the CPL in Canada at the time. Now he's signed in the US. There are a number of players in England who would be willing to play for us. So most probably we could create a whole national team of OCIs, to represent us. It is not. It's
Do
not. It's not rocket science. It is for the government of India and the sports ministry. Not just saying, listen, you know what? Oh, we want to interact with the diaspora. No, take the steps to allow players of origin to represent us. It's not just a football topic. It can be a topic in every sport. If India wants to be a more successful sporting nation, to be a serious bidder for the Olympics in 2036, we need to be more successful, and that can only be possible with more representation of Indian origin people. Very simple.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. I think that's the only best way that you can develop the top level and engage more fans, because I think people say ki if you get for example the ISL, the marketing gimmick that all happened in the starting years to get that fan engagement, but it all declined because people were not getting the quality through their face of Indian football, which is the face of Indian football, is a national team. So until and unless we are not getting the quality out there, how are we going to engage new fans? How are we going to engage the new generation into coming into the sport and supporting this sport in the country? I think to create that, if again, if we are saying grassroots, 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 it's going to continue for next 20, 30 years, right? And maybe more than that. So there has to be the integration of overseas players, I guess.
That is one, and again, the other problem is, of course, is that people have the option to watch international football, right? Be it Champions League, be it the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga. The quality of it is better. The quality of production is better. But I also always say is that if you now come in January, want to watch a match in Europe, um, watching it live might not be the great experience that you think it is when you watch it on television. There are sports, and again, sometimes watching football matches at home is sometimes more fun than watching it live, because sometimes I know from people who say, if you're watching it live, the experience sometimes is not as great as on television. Or another sport which I love to watch is Formula One. Formula One is more interesting actually on television than it is watching it live, because every few seconds a car goes past you like this, but on the screen you're actually watching what's happening. So therefore, television is something. Again, even cricket, looks more interesting on television than watching it live. So therefore, we are a country of couch potatoes. Let's not forget it, right? People, in my opinion, find thousands reasons of not going to a sporting venue and rather saying, "Oh no, I've got this reason, that reason." Or I hear this very often when I do my lives. People saying, "Oh, I didn't know that this was happening." And it's like, guys, all of you have a mobile phone. You just need to type in whatever it is, and you will get to know when and where what is happening. I mean, and this is not a new problem. This is a global problem, that actually all information today is available at your fingertip, right? When we started IndianFootball.com, and I have to be thankful to those guys, those journalists who used to send us emails with the results. Forget sending it by mobile phone. Sometimes you used to get the result of a match the next morning, because the people didn't have access to internet in the stadium. They had to go in the morning to the office, send us an email, say, "Listen, this is the result of this match." So everything is easily available, sometimes maybe too easily available, right? And this is something also where we say, we were talking, oh, why did the ISL fail? Because the Indian football fan also doesn't want to spend money on watching something. He doesn't want to pay
Yeah,
money to go to the stadium. He doesn't want to pay
because
19 or 25 rupees for a broadcast.
that's influenced with the consumption of football outside India. So if, like, I think this Sunil Chetri also said it, that if you get this a 1 hour of time and you get the option to watch Premier League and you get the option to watch ISL, why would you watch ISL, right? Do you agree with that?
No, I don't, and I've discussed this with Sunil as well. I feel if I talk about the live experience, I don't go to a sporting venue anywhere in the world just for the 90 minutes or whatever time it is to watch the sport. I go to enjoy myself, right? I said this also in 2014 when we started Mumbai City. We need to create a community, allow fan groups to grow. Going live to a football stadium is always a different experience than actually watching it live. And I know for certain fans, it's an effort, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to a venue, get back in late evening and all. I understand all that. But to watch something live is always, in my opinion, more valuable than watching
So
it
are
on
Indians,
television.
so why are Indians not understanding this?
I'm not a psychologist, otherwise I could give you an answer to this. But I tell you my own example. For example, I remember 2022 FIFA World Cup. I was at the start of the tournament in November. I was in uh, uh, India. I was in Kolkata actually. Mohammedan Sporting were playing an I-League match against Niroka. Germany was playing Japan in the World Cup. I was at the Kishore Bharati watching that game live, and on the phone I was actually watching the Germany game. Right? Where are your priorities? I remember Argentina was playing Saudis. The Argentinians scored a goal. I knew East Bengal was training where my hotel was in Kolkata. Next to it, East Bengal was training. I actually went over across to watch East Bengal train. What are your priorities? Maybe my priorities are different. My priorities
I think the
is to watch football.
priority the
right? And I
priority
bet
of
you
entertainment.
99% of people would have watched the Argentina match on television rather than go and watch a training session or watch a game or whatever. So this is for me what I bring from a German football culture, right? I will go in the bad weather on the weekend. I will go and watch my team play football, even if it is -2 degrees. If they're going to play, I will watch them play, right? My team used to be second Bundesliga. Now they're sixth tier, but I go and watch them, right?
So
So
is
this
it
is
the
the commitment you have.
So, is it a problem with Indians that they are too comfortable with the entertainment that they are being provided with while sitting on their couch and not going outside and experiencing the sport? And because they are not able to experience the environment or the culture or the sport firsthand through live experience, uh, they do not grow that foundation of understanding the sport the way they should be and how football should be developed in the country.
It is the culture of football following as a fan following, right? Take example Wrexham, right? Incredible journey. I mean, now they're in the promotion spots of the championship to fight for potentially for Premier League promotion. But think about at the time where Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds bought the club, that they were 15 years in the fifth year of English football, a small Northern Welsh club, but still with that support in the locality, right? Those people in the fifth year were supporting them the same way as they're supporting them today. And they are, again, the sensational game against QPR on the weekend, 91st, 92nd minute, they were 2-1 down and they won 3-2. And there's this brilliant video of the commentary. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's just insane, which shows you the passion of football. If you are passionate about football, whenever your team is playing, you will go and watch them. I had this crazy story. I told you earlier, 2005, the Bayern Munich B team came to Kolkata to play the IFA Shield. There's this one fan of Bayern Munich who nearly, I think, 17 or 18 years until COVID, because then he wasn't allowed, until COVID, didn't miss a match of the first team, be it a Bundesliga match, a Champions League match, a German Cup match, or even a friendly. On a Friday, he was in Kolkata for the IFA Shield semi-final, and he's telling me after the semi-final, Arunava, I need to somehow get to the airport. I need to be tomorrow in Stuttgart. I said, what? Yeah, the first team is playing. But I said, you told me to organize your tickets for Sunday. I said, yeah, I'll be back in Kolkata on Sunday. So this Bayern Munich fan on a Friday was sitting in Kolkata watching a match at the Salt Lake Stadium. On a Saturday, traveled to Stuttgart, and on Sunday was back to see Bayern Munich lift the IFA Shield. Right?
Uh, yeah,
And his
I
whole
think
and the whole life of these guys has been built around the scheduling of their clubs. Right? There are people today already traveling across Europe because tomorrow there's a Champions League match day.
if I recall, there was Joe Morrison on the conversation, and he stated something similar about developing that culture, developing a fan culture. How much of the efforts has been put up by the clubs and the franchises that were in the Indian Super League for the last 10 years? Because I am quoting what he said was, that 10 years is almost a generation, if you look at it.
I'll tell you the most positive example of them all, and that is Kerala Blasters. It is an insane level of interaction. Kerala has always been a football loving state. You've had in the 90s FC Kochi, who came into the NFL in 1997 and a few years later disappeared because, again, even at that stage, they were overspending. To sign I am Vijay and Jopal Ancheri, they actually had to break the bank. The same happened to Viva Kerala, came into the NFL, but again, overspending, had to disappear from the scene. But if you see what the Blasters have created in that fan connect, and if you see the whole criticism and all that stuff that has happened in the last few years, that to me, and especially the creation of the Manjapara, is a great success story of fan culture through the ISL. In a small extent, but also if I see the Gores of FC Goa, not in the numbers of what the Blasters have created. If I look at the small numbers that Mumbai City with the West Coast Brigade has created,
Or
what
even
BFC,
Bengaluru.
they
Yeah.
exactly, I was coming to the West Block Blues, right? That has come through the I League and through the ISL, even though that has gotten less. These are some of the positive examples of how to create somewhat of a fan connect, and it's worked. Others have tried and done, Marina Machans as well. But the Indian football fan, and there we come back again to the thing, Wrexham failing, but the fans stuck with them. If your team is not successful, the general Indian football fan, even the club fan of XYZ club, will not go and support you. Chennai is a good example. Last season, Mumbai City didn't do good. Suddenly, the numbers went down. The biggest example is East Bengal. Theoretically, East Bengal's numbers should be the same as Mohun Bagan, but they're not. So the problem of that Indian football fan is that the Indian football fan or the Indian fan, forget Indian football fan. I've seen that even with cricket in the past. That if you're not successful, the numbers automatically dwindle. And I always
And
say in
that's something to
2004,
do with the culture, that's something to do with the sporting culture as a whole in the country.
lack of sporting culture. No? It's you follow success. You don't follow sport. I take an example of
Spot
Japan.
on, spot on. I think that's a quotable. You follow
Yeah.
success, not the sport.
Japan. I was involved in organizing on the 8th of September 2004 the World Cup qualifier in Kolkata. 5,000 Japanese fans came into Kolkata, 90,000 people in the stadium. We still don't know how the Japanese came in because there was no special flights coming from anywhere. They were suddenly there. There were these groups of young Japanese girls who had Japan written in Hindi and Bengali fonts, which they got from the Maidan market. I saw them. They won 4-0 that night in Kolkata. I saw them 2 years later in Dortmund against Brazil in the World Cup. They lost 4-1. The support was 1:1 the same. And that to me shows you a mature fan culture. I've said this many years back in an interview of Superpower Football when I was walking with Ankush on the roads of Carter Road in Mumbai. I took the example of BFC at the time abusing Robin Singh, who was playing for East Bengal against BFC. And it's like, guys, he's won you a title. He's playing for an opponent, but he was one of yours once, right? And BFC to me is again also has been a success story in regard to fan culture. But this point, I
I think
criticized.
that's something Mumbai City also did with Apuya.
Yeah, but I felt Mumbai City was really funny because they did that thing with the money, right? And there was, it was more sarcastic. So I thought it was actually
Yeah,
a nice piece of criticism,
yeah, sarcastic, yeah.
right? Sarcasm is fine, but you don't abuse a player who was one of your own. Again, that is my football understanding coming out of Germany, right? Again, and this is even in Germany, sometimes it's a problem. If a Dortmund player wants to go to Schalke, or Schalke player goes to Dortmund, or Dortmund player goes to Bayern, and this is something about a mature fan culture, and we need to grow that. We This is one thing where fans also need to question the system in a right way. Do you understand the right and wrongs of the Indian football system? Do you understand of where we need to take the Indian football system? These are some, in my opinion, basic problems that we're facing today.
I think there are not enough people to ask the right questions, but there are more people who are influenced through social media and the PR that's being generated. I think I'll take example of some individuals. For example, first let's start with Sunil. Brilliant player, has done a lot for the country, has received and has that respect put on his name. What's the point of dragging Sunil Chetri at a time when he is retired from the national team? He is about to retire from club football. Why do we need to drag him into every matter of Indian football to gain sympathy? Why are we not putting out a representation of someone like Manisha Kalyan or some other individuals who are going and doing it right now, right? Making things right now. For example, let's say example of Ranjit Bajaj, right? Through a clip that just got viral, people now wanted and considered him, and I'm talking thousands and not thousands, lakhs and lakhs of people wanting him to be the head coach of the national team. And again, you cannot say that अरे उनको क्या आता है. They are our fan culture. That's the fan culture. That's the fan following that we have in Indian football. That those people are want expecting him to be the national team head coach. But it's also Ranjit Bajaj. Also, he himself understands that he's not a coach. He's an academy director. He runs an academy. He has coaches and staff hired and in his system. But the way things are portrayed overnight, Ranjit Bajaj is the head coach of the national team, and that's what the Indian football fan culture is consuming. So how do we expect the environment to be smarter, right? And until unless we are not smart as fans, where, how can we question the ecosystem? Are every questions going to be driven through PR generated campaigns of individuals, whether it's footballer, whether it's stakeholders? It's all PR. Overnight you are becoming the god of Indian football. I don't.
See, the problem is that I feel you say PR. PR is what has driven a lot of people to say a lot of things over the last 2 years. But we are, you know, I have tried to, in this conversation with you, try to give you a substance and an understanding of where I feel the things are right or wrong and what is lacking. I also feel a lot of people who are part of the conversation don't even know a lot of the facts of things that have happened over the last 20, 30 years. Right? The problem is that there are certain realities where people will say, no, 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 this is bad, that is bad. There needs to be an understanding that the, the potential of Indian football is there. It's massive. But we're not doing anything with it. We're not reaching that next level, that higher level to be able to be successful. And that's the problem. In my opinion, that's the basic problem. That's the basic challenge that Indian football faces. If we allow the wrong people to be in the wrong positions, Indian football can and will go nowhere. That's our problem. And that is the challenge where how can we push Indian football to where it can needs to be? Yeah, that's a challenge.
So we right now we just deep dived into the minds of a football fan. I think my voice is reflecting. Hello,
Not for me.
you know. Now let's get back to a little bit about national team. Everything. The conversation that we are having today about Indian football being successful on a margin of 100%. It's 90% the national team that has to do well. Do you agree with that?
I don't, because I look at the women's game at the moment. We are having a very, very successful phase at international level where the senior women's team have qualified for the Asian Cup, where the under 20s have qualified for the Asian Cup, and the under 17s as well. And we've only seen Coca Cola come now forward, but that is part of a CSR program of the FIFA World Cup Trophy Tour.
Do you think that to some extent the women's footballing culture is and the support that they deserve is not up to the mark, and it's it's the women and it's the men that have to come together. It's not just a particular gender that we are saying, but is there a problem with people? Why are we not looking at the success of women football equally, or on the same level, and appreciating it?
See, I go back maybe to a cricket example and see if I see the success of the women cricketers at the moment and see the success of the women's cricket league, then you could counter that point that theoretically it could work, right? And if I look at European women's football, it is growing exponentially, but it's not growing at the level in the men's game. And in India, women's football is quite a bit off, even though we've had more success. We've had Bala Devi playing at Glasgow Rangers. Manisha has had her time in Cyprus and Greece and now has gone to Peru. Manisha scored a goal against Brazil, for the Indian national team. If I look at India qualifying for the women's Asian Cup last year, there was limited messages of support for the women's football team. But again, if I look at cricket and then we see how much support did the men's get when they qualified for the Asian Cup. So therefore, that already that is already low. And then the women's are even lower. And that is the problem of how we are where we stand, because the IWL at the moment is being held as a tournament and not as a proper league. So those things are interconnected and make it very, very tricky and very, very difficult.
Difficult for the fans.
No, difficult for the game. I think, see, for me, as I've said earlier, for me as a fan, it is, no, I've not said this, but for me, very, very important is, I think in an Indian context, the fan is expecting something from Indian football or from club football, which the club or which the national team cannot deliver to you. And
Yeah.
I say, and I've said in the past, your support needs to be unconditional. If you make it a conditional support, then your level of support automatically goes down. And
But
in Indian football,
let me
you
argue
will
with
have
you.
more failures than success.
Let me argue with you, or like a average European football fan. Let me argue with you on like that. Why do I support the national team? Your team losing to Bangladesh, your team losing to Hong Kong, your team losing to lower ranked nation. Why do I support the national team? I will watch something else. I will watch my favorite club in Europe. I'll watch Liverpool. I'll watch Liverpool. You know, I'll watch some other clubs. Why are you asking me for
So
support? Why
why
are
are
you
you
not developing
supporting?
yourself?
No, I
Why are
will
you not
again.
developing yourself?
So you are lucky that you have now come to support Liverpool in the
your
Klopp
players
days.
cannot your players cannot make five passes in your players cannot make five passes in a row. What?
Again,
That's a
I
big
watched
problem.
recently
I don't
Arsenal
like.
against Liverpool, and that was anti-football. So not let me, and I've told that Akshata as well. So let's not get into that football and quality of football, right?
Yeah,
If we want
no,
to get
but
to the
on
quality
the
of football, I
basic.
watched the Euros last summer. I watched the Euros last summer and I watched Kylian Mbappe running in front of me playing for France. I was not impressed. Right. So therefore, again, the reality of watching a live game and this and
Expectations.
that. But if I'm watching Kylian Mbappe, I want him to be running up and down for 90 minutes like a Usain Bolt, which he's not going to do. Right. But that is I heard around me a lot of people talking about that. The reality is, um, if you are, let's say, a Manchester United fan, okay, now you're celebrating because you beat Arsenal. But how much of success has Manchester United had since 2013? Right? Right? So the being a football fan does not, again, and that's why I go back to what I said a little earlier. Man United fans used to be called glory hunters, right? In the early 2010s. So the point is, at the end of the day, if we even have a little bit of success, we are still not willing to support it. And that is very, very sad, because our women's have always been actually better and closer to a World Cup than the men's. We lost in 19, we nearly made the 1999 FIFA World Cup. We lost 1-0 to Japan, right? So these are things, these are realities which we are not willing to see. We had two female footballers here in Germany at Karlsheim, Sujata Kaur, who recently coached East Bengal, and another woman. And we've not followed it. So
But
there
sir,
is a bias, there's a gender bias on that, surely, and the willingness to support. Let's see. The Asian Cup will be an interesting test in March, how much of support in the Indian women's get. And then we'll see. But it will be less.
another
And it is
argument,
supported
another
less.
another argument for, as a European football fan, are you as an Indian who watches football, are you blaming me for not supporting the football, not supporting India's football unconditionally, or is it your responsibility to develop yourself and attract me as a football fan?
I think it's both. But at the end of the day, I remember a tweet that I put out in 2022 around the World Cup final, where I had written, I would love to see the passion that a lot of fans seem to have for Brazil and Argentina for the Indian football national team. I think one of my most interactive tweets ever, because a lot of people then said, um, and the gist is, let India be more successful at international football, then I will support it. Again, we come to that mental with this mentality, with the psychology of the thing. Are be more successful, I'll be there. No, there is a pathway to success. Again, I told you about why would someone, again, I have people who are 70, 80 years old here in my city, in my hometown of Remscheid, who've seen FC Remscheid in the second Bundesliga. There were 5, 6,000 people who used to go there and watch their home games. They're now playing sixth division. And these guys who are with their walking sticks go in any kind of weather, go and support the team. because it is their team. It is your team. Whenever you win or you lose, but especially when your team loses, you need to stand by your team, be it national team or be it club. But this is something, again, this is what I would like to
But
change in
now
the fan culture in
there,
India.
there is another
That's the biggest
there is
challenge.
another there, there comes a feeling of guilt as well. Let me tell you, there comes a feeling of guilt कि यार why do I need to care about a team जो कि मतलब why do I need to go and be responsibly going and following my team who is a 141 ranked nation जिसको ये नहीं करने आता वो नहीं करने आता इसके साथ हटते हैं उसके साथ हटते हैं अभी जो because see consuming world class football and having to support Indian football when you are consuming world class football and interacting about it with in the communities with fans with people supporting Indian football creates a lot of guilt for you कि अगर मैं सपोर्ट करूंगा कि यार इट्स ऑल डिसअपॉइंटमेंट इट्स ऑल लॉसेस एंड एवरीथिंग सो वो गिल्ट वाला पार्ट भी आई थिंक इट्स वेरी आर्ग्यूएबल कि बहुत फैंस को वो लगता है अभी एक इंडियन फुटबॉल ऐसे सिचुएशन में
Again, I am different on that. I've always been different. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been supporting Indian football. But to me, what I've
would
always
your
said,
mentality would your mentality be different if you were born and brought up in India?
I don't know. Most probably, yes. Because I come with as I say, I today support, my first match that I watched as, uh, when I went my own was 14, 15, when FC Ramstedt was playing second Bundesliga. My first match actually, which I saw of them was against Bayern Munich in a German Cup game. But I still go, right? Again, I go and watch also their rivals again, who also here in the sixth tier, because I support my local teams, right? I watch more local football than I actually watch Bundesliga football live, right? So there is a mentality thing. As I told you, I was watching Mohammedan Sporting. I was never, I will never be a Mohammedan Sporting fan, but I watched them play in the I League while Germany was playing Japan. So yes, it shows
So
my
if
mentality of football. If I've got the opportunity, I am in the city. Last year around this time, I was planning a trip to India. I looked at the scheduling of matches of Punjab FC in Delhi, of Mumbai City, of matches in Kolkata. So I planned my trip accordingly that I could match Punjab FC against Jamshedpur FC. I watched Mumbai City against East Bengal. I watched Inter Kashi against Gokulam, and I watched Mohun Bagan against Punjab FC. So that's me. If
so
I
that
am in India, I
that
want to watch live
so
matches.
d- does that have to do a lot with the culture that you were born and brought up in that
Yes.
was heavily on football and
No,
that's
no,
not
it's no,
something
forget football. I watch, for example, I also now, I've
sporting
also watched
no
handball.
leave football
I watch other sports as
sporting
well.
culture
Sporting culture. It's a sporting fan culture. I am watching sports because it's part of a community. I've made friends over there. You interact. You
and
maybe
that's not
have
happening in India.
it is happening, but on not on a mass scale. As I told you, it has happened with the Manjapara. Look at
Yeah.
the Manjapara, even in the Middle East. Go out and support Team India wherever. If they're playing in Qatar, if they're playing in the UAE or playing in the Saudi, you will see a few in those yellow shirts. The Manjapara are there. So that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying we've spoken about the West Block Blues, West Coast Brigade, about the Gores, about now the fan clubs. Again, East Bengal, Mohun Bagan now have a fan club culture, which they 10, 15 years ago didn't have, right? So to say it does not exist would be wrong. But the magnitude is not there that you say, you know what, if an East Bengal and Mohun Bagan play at the Salt Lake Stadium, they can sell out a Salt Lake Stadium with 60,000 fans every match day. That does not exist. That is one of the challenges.
Yeah. See, I think I just want to take some more time, and there's this inner thought that I wanted to make a video also about. And just a second. Yeah. So there is this inner thought that I also wanted to always speak to people. Okay, and now with now with watching Sportfolio, now with the Sportfolio productions, the Traveler's Guide to Indian Football, when I sit down to watch it, I realize that the culture is there, the football culture is there, but because of how big we are as a nation, it's isolated to the places where it is. Me as a football fan, अगर मुझे फुटबॉल किसी तरह एक्सेसिबिलिटी मिल जाती है to play around with a ball and play football in middle of Uttar Pradesh, surrounded by different sport, but there is no football nearby. I almost have close to no accessibility to discover the football culture that's happening in Super League Kerala, right? How much of the headlines did Super League Kerala make nationwide that this is massive is happening in Kate? Because people, it's the interest of Kerala guys who are doing it. They do not want to represent it nationwide. They are happy in isolation, but it's not good.
No, I
Same with
wouldn't
other
say they're happy in isolation. I would think that it would be happy if there was national interest, but they don't have the bandwidth to push it nationally. So they're fine, let's say in
yeah,
Kerala, to push it across the state of Kerala. And the similar thing exists, let's say,
the
with
bandwidth, the media
bandwidth.
bandwidth, the
Bandwidth,
media
media,
bandwidth.
social media, and all, because I realize I've helped to some extent with the development of football in Mizoram. If you would see where Mizoram was 15 years ago, and if you see where Mizoram is today, day and night difference. But do a lot of people, and I've been lucky because of football, I have been to Mizoram. Without football, maybe I wouldn't even know that Mizoram as a state exists, to be honest about it, right? So, but I've seen what they have done right over the last 15 years. They didn't have anything. They built everything from scratch with the support of government, with the support of the civil society. And therefore, that is what is there. Therefore, when you talk about the traveler's guide to Indian football, I always say my favorite story is that one of the mothers in Sikkim. That is my favorite story in the whole series, because that is it. They found it by chance, right? They also showcase it. They found by chance that these mothers are playing, and they're playing actually tournament. This is what grassroots football is about. You will not know, I will not know, the world doesn't know, but these mothers are playing football. I always also say the first person who taught me football is my mother. My mother used to play with me in our backyard in a sari, right? So this is very, very important of how you are accustomed to sports. Do
The
we, how,
representation
yeah,
of the culture, the
yes.
representation of the culture, it has to there has to be more bandwidth for us
But
to
there is
represent the
football
culture.
culture. There is football culture, as you say, across India. To
Isolation.
say there is no, it's not isolation. It is there, and it's not that small. But sometimes also that internal culture is not growing in a sense to actually promoting and supporting Indian football as an overall. Right? You have, for example, Sevens in Kerala, which is very successful. It's an own world. It's like Cape football in Bengal and its neighboring sort of Jharkhand and Odisha, which is huge. You get more people watching Cape than I League and ISL matches. But it is a parallel system. So therefore, football is there, right? So, but these are people who would never watch Premier League. Most of these people don't even know the Premier League exists, but they go when they're playing football, in South Chabis Pargana, North Chabis Pargana, and those makeshift raggedy stands, they're watching it. So football exists in a lot of parts of India. I've been lucky to see football in parts of India where I would have never gone, right? So therefore, to put this all together as a puzzle, as a jigsaw, is very, very complex and very, very complicated. And I also will always say, without the right leadership at the top, trying to bring all of this together and trying to say, listen, guys, this is has to be a national plan, even getting the government interested, it will not happen. It cannot happen in isolation. But the blocks are there of this puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle are there to put it together to take Indian football to the next level. But it will also take time. And this is one thing India also likes to do. I love the word now is jugaad. Jugaad se nahi hoga. You have to do the leg work, the hard work for development overall. Otherwise, it will not take you to that next level. And we also need to learn from each other. I, for example, would not have known about these mothers playing football in Sikkim, or the other stories of what was happening in Kashmir or something, right? I know, for example, how Miraj and Ishfaq came to the national scene playing for Jammu and Kashmir under 19s. ITI picked them up, and as they say, the rest is history. So there's been luck. I've been lucky to work with Suki Sir, who they speak about. Yeah, so these are some of the realities, and Um, yeah, we have to work very, very hard to reach that next level.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we did talk a lot about the culture. Culture exists, things exist, but I think the only thing is we cannot see through the tunnel. कि आगे क्या होगा? That's you know that's a big missing piece of the puzzle or whatever we are talking about. कि we cannot see through the tunnel कि आगे क्या होगा. Okay, so let's now come to the end of discussion. We have been here for almost 2 hours. First of all, thank you so much for being and giving us this time. Uh, okay, there is one thing that we mentioned to talk about: players losing motivation to perform for the national team because they are being heavily paid by by their clubs, by wherever they are playing at. I do not understand one thing, sir, that what does money being paid by your club for your life, for your livelihood, has to do with your motivation to play and perform for the national team? Because if you look at the upbringing of any sports person जो कि professionally sports को आगे ले जाना चाहते हैं, the national team is the goal. So if we are saying that Liston Colasso or any other player playing the national team is not giving his 100%, what do we mean from that? What are we actually expecting Liston Colasso or any footballer whom we are feeling that they are not giving their 100% on the field? What is our expectation from them, and how do we justify that money coming into their pocket for their well-being, for their lifestyle? How it decreases the motivation for them to perform for the national team.
My counter question is, can you prove that point? My point is to anyone who says that, can you prove it? Would be my first question. And my second point is, I feel, and having traveled, worked with the Indian national team over the years, what has happened with the Indian Super League over the last decade, with the better quality foreigners playing around you, you do look better when you're playing with those players. The key players, the decision makers on the field are all foreigners. So it means that whenever I have a problem with the ball, I can play it to someone and he will take care of it and he will do something with the ball. For, let's say, for Liston or a Manveer Singh, who've gotten a lot of criticism, they can play the ball. Last season, they would have played a ball to Greg Stewart or to a Cummings or a McLaren or a
Petratos.
Petratos, and they would have done something with the ball, right? Or this Greg Stewart plays such a good pass that Manveer just has to finish it off and score a goal. Does Manveer get that pass in the national team from a Brandon, from an Apuya, or whoever else is playing? No, he doesn't. So that my first thing which I would question is, are the players giving the 100%? That's my first question. The second point,
Do you
out
agree
of
with
own
the,
experience,
do you think they are giving 100% for the national team?
they're giving their best. But is that best 100%? I will not be able to tell you. Because my question is, what I have learned having worked with the team under Sukiji, Apaji, under Stephen, under Bob, if your team quality is 100%, you have to get that 5, 10 extra percent out of the players to get results, right? Suki's approach was different. Suki, with all due respect, not the best coach, but is a brilliant man manager. He was a brilliant man. He knew his players to the core. Be it I am Vijan, he allowed him to be I am Vijan. Joe Polancheri, the same thing. When Sunil left Mohun Bagan to join JCT, he changed the mentality of his Sunil. Sunil was the top scorer that season in the I League. Stephen, hard work, dedication. Sometimes maybe, you know, a rough taskmaster. And Bob Houghton? Was like the older friend,
What about
right?
Igor?
See, with Igor at the start, pre-COVID, I thought he was on the right path. I remember we sat after the nil-nil against Qatar in Doha quite a bit at that night and chatted about football with certain other peoples also over there. I had high hopes. And post-COVID, it was again, as we've spoken about other people as well, it was more PR than actual work. And I felt he got influenced by things. And what has happened, if you look at it, when Steven handed over the team to Igor, it was functional. When Igor handed over the team to Manolo and Manolo handed it over to Khalid, it was a team in disarray. The Bangladesh game for me is a perfect example. In Dhaka, Bangladesh, after 70 minutes, were physically finished. It was Hamza who was keeping them together. And in the old days, we would have somehow gotten a 1-1, like we did in Singapore, right? We would have gotten an undeserving 1-1, but we would have somehow gotten away with it. So my question is then to Manolo, who I regard as one of the best coaches in the history of the ISL. But Manolo didn't understand. This is my learnings of having worked with these coaches. You have to work differently as a club coach and as a national team coach. You have much, much less time. But also, you need to work. Sometimes when you're working with an Indian national team, I remember, be it Steve and be it Bob, they worked on the basics. They, I remember Baichung said, there was a famous quote, I learned how to trap a ball under Neil Warnock at Bury Football Club. Right? Baichung already was a superstar in 1999 when he went to England. So this is something I remember 2004 before that Japan match. Stephen Constantine actually got a rope and tied his back line of five together so the players would know the distances amongst them. Because otherwise, his five-man back line, because Indian players at the time, I remember Bob used to say, I can only play 4-4-2. If I try something else, this team just falls apart. So you need to know the strengths and weaknesses, and you need to know as a national team coach which player will perform for me. I remember there was a player in Bob's time who was one of the best players in the I League, who he never called up because he said he's the best player in the league, but he is not going to be able to cope with international football. And that has been the problem over the last 4 or 5 years, that players have been called up who either are not ready for international football. Even I have made mistakes. I, for example, like a player like Ayush Chetri. I thought it was a right decision by Manolo to call him up. But if you see him, no, he is still not ready for that level of football. Right. So those are the things where you need to be very, very picky and choosy and be right and pick your players.
Now let's conclude the discussion. How do you think this entire mess of Indian football hanging by a thread, being so unsustainable तो पहले से ही था, being so uncertain, so much of uncertainty and so much of fear amongst the players involved in the ecosystem going to influence the upcoming generation?
A lot of the youngsters think that they can play La Liga, Premier League, Bundesliga, and all that stuff. I have had Indian youth teams coming here to Europe, academy teams, and then realizing if they play against proper teams, they're going to get demolished. Right? If you're playing some grassroots la 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 teams, you're going to win. So it makes no sense. The quality difference is massive, and we need to be honest enough also to Indian kids to say, listen, guys, under the age of 18, you cannot come to Europe to play football because you have to come to Europe, then you have to sign a professional contract with a professional team, which is also not known. So if these players are coming, they're not coming for football reasons. They're either coming on the educational route or pay to play. Let's be very clear on that. So that dream of playing abroad has been there. The point is, if you're coming from a rural setting and you think football is your career, are you really thinking of what is happening? Do the kids who are in academies at the moment, across India, do they know what is happening at the top level? I'm not sure, right? So for me, I always continue to say, try and be a Sunil, try and be a Baichung, because to become a Messi or Ronaldo or a Pele or Maradona or Cruyff, Beckenbauer, whatever, is unrealistic, right? I know your dream should be
Unrealistic
the highest.
until when? Until when? Until we have like 11 Sunil Chetris, for
No,
example.
no, no. See, if you are an exceptional, I always say this, if there is an Indian boy or girl who is so exceptional that he or she breaks through the system, he or she can make it, right? But I have never seen that exceptional talent. I always say I've got one player who I saw, who I would say technically is I'm Vijan. If Viju Bhai was born in Brazil or in Argentina, I think he could have been a world star. He had that technical ability. But he also, he had offers to go here and there. He didn't take the risk because he was getting in those days good money in Indian football. So this whole perception of only the ISL has spoiled the players with money is not a new perception. This happened even in the NFL days in the late 90s. So this is a reality check that I always give people and say, guys, yes, it has exponentially grown, right? In those days we were talking about lakhs, now we talk about multi crores. That's the only difference. But you earning in lakhs in the late 90s was a lot of money for these guys. So just to put things into perspective. So for an Indian kid to dream, lovely, dream. I have no problem. You should dream to get to the highest level, but also have realistic targets of what you can achieve. Because if your targets are so unrealistic, it's not going to happen, right? So this is the reality check, and this is also a question for the coaches, for the people involved in academies or football schools, to give the kids a reality check. There are football schools from European clubs where parents send their kids, where the kids and the parents think that they will end up in the academies of European clubs. They don't realize that these are pay to play models, which, yes, copy the training of those European clubs, but it is not a pathway to the European clubs, right? So there are a lot of myths which are there in our Indian football youth system.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the realistic point of view has to be there, and that's how we'll go forward. So, with that, let's come to the end of this discussion. I think we had a quite good time deep diving into. I think the key topic became the culture today. Don't you think? Because we deep dived into the culture a
Yeah.
lot. Because I think it's all from here, right? So what runs through my mind as a football fan and how I think about it matters a lot. Yep.
I think a very
So
important
yeah,
point is, as an Indian football fan, is whenever there is a positive moment, enjoy it. We have few, we have few, enjoy it. We have a lot of downs, but when you have the ups, enjoy it. But also, when we're having the ups, try and stay in the real world and not, you know, think about things. Again, it's like our women playing the Asian Cup. A lot of people are talking about the Women's World Cup. I would love to see us playing the FIFA Women's World Cup next year in Brazil. But if I look at our group, getting a point is already a challenge with the preparations we had and with the talent we have. So therefore, I'm too old for that. I now live in reality. I like to dream sometimes, but the young me dreamed much, much more. I'm too old. I have to live in the real world nowadays.
absolutely, absolutely. I think we have to be in the reality, and it has to start from conversations and people putting out the information out there. Someone like you, and there are a lot of other guys also, who do this, and me having you guys on the channel and trying to amplify your thoughts to the fans and the people who are interested, who watch our platform. Thank you so much, Arunava sir, for this amazing time on Chak De Football, and we hope to see you again on the platform. Thank you so much.